Hey everybody, this is Dr. J, Gene Investing and Spike, streaming live from coast to coast, literally. You're on the we're on the what coast are we on? The East Coast,
Right, we're on the I guess is it the right coast?
the right coast.
No, we're on the left coast.
Gene
Left coast.
editing would be on the other coast.
The
Yep.
correct coast.
California.
Linus is with
Hey,
us.
Linus is here. How are you, Linus?
Linus wants some winners, Mr. Gene Investing.
Max out your margin. Yeah, that's always
Well,
smart.
seems like there's some guaranteed winners, but you're just gonna have to be patient. It's gonna take a while.
Yeah, I know you're very patient. You've been investing like on a regular basis into Beam and Intellia, correct?
Yeah, I in the past I had some CRISPR and even edit for a short time, long time ago. But now it's just Beam and Intellia.
Professor Spike, does Gina Investing's feed sound raspy to you now? His voice?
It does, but we'll get over it. I'm sure.
You
I
think
might have had
A
my
little
hand on
cracker
the.
with it.
Sometimes I'm just doing it over my phone, so I might have had my hand covering the mic.
All
Okay.
right, let's hope for the best.
Yeah.
So
Just a little crackling is all.
we're going to get a little overview as to what gene editing is from Gene Investing. Gene Investing has a very big following on Twitter for primarily those who are into Intellia, CRISPR, Beam, Editas, Verve, CRBU, whatever that stands for,
Caribou.
Caribou. And what's the other one? There's one more.
Well, there's Prime.
Prime Computer, yeah, Prime Therapeutics. I owned some, but I sold it. All right, I'll let you have the floor. You can give us a brief intro. Keep in mind that besides Dr. Chucky, there, most people that follow the show are laymen and don't have a great idea about what it means to do gene editing. So
Yeah,
keep it simple.
I tried to get my aunt to watch that Human Nature on Netflix.
Mhm.
And it's pretty high level stuff, so she fell asleep like 15 minutes into it. But it's you can't be tired if you're not really interested like I am. Basically, there's a lot of gene therapy companies over the years, right? And then CRISPR got founded, mainly from Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier from.
Didn't they win the Nobel Prize?
Yeah. Yep. And that was part of why CRISPR shot up to 220 back, when it hit that high, what is it, about 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
I think part of that was the Nobel Prize gave it kind of the start to that jump. And then Beam came along with the base editing and now Prime. So that a lot of people call it version 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. And the 1.0 definitely has some limitations because it does make a cut, like a double-stranded cut of the DNA. And that doesn't always repair itself exactly how you want it to. But they're getting really, really good at that. I was looking at some of the data from Intellia today and, looking at off targets and things like that. And there's still some off targets, but what people don't really seem to realize is you get a sunburn outside and your DNA gets jumbled.
Let me ask you this. The closest drug to approval is a sickle cell disease drug by CRISPR, CRISPR Vertex, right?
Yeah, and it works for beta thalassemia also.
Really?
Could you explain how a patient is treated?
So yeah, that's a big ex vivo. So ex vivo is that's a really long process because they first have to do the conditioning to get you and it's toxic conditioning to get you ready for like a transplant. I think first they take the cells, your stem cells out, and then they probably do the conditioning, and then it takes like, I think it's like a 3-month process. It's a long process. That's why it was so impressive that CRISPR is going to have maybe their first approval in about a 4-year period from when they dosed the first patient. The FDA is probably going to be about 4.5 years.
Well,
Because that's amazing when you think about that. It takes about 3 months every time they have to dose someone. It's a long process.
oh, we got him. Good.
Okay, and so that, like I was saying, the ex vivo, they need to condition you with busulfan, like chemo, basically.
So it's sort of like getting a an implant of your own cells.
So let me see. I believe they have to do they take, I forget if it's the conditioning first or but they have to do a transplant. They have to get your cells ready for the transplant back in, I think. So they probably take some out. They do the ex vivo in the lab where they do the gene editing. And then they condition you so you're prepared to have them, so your body doesn't fight them when they come back in
Right.
as much. So that's a long process. And that's why it's so amazing that it only is going to take like 4.5 years from the first dosing to approval. That's why a lot of people are really frustrated with how slow Beam has been, because Beam took a long time to dose this first patient. From when they got the IND passed, it was, I think, over a year ago. So they're taking a long time.
Right. And I'm sure they need an adequate enough pipeline before the FDA would even approve anything.
Yeah, but Intellia has shown you just go to New Zealand, go to the UK, and these other countries are approving things pretty easily, it seems like. Like Intellia has already done, all their patients that they've treated have been outside of the US. And that's what's exciting in the next week.
They're into liver disease, right?
Yeah, both of that's why I like CRISPR. I definitely would not tell someone to not buy it. I think it's a pretty safe bet to at least double from here, like within the next probably 12 months.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double's a double.
Of course, our opinions are strictly our own and not necessarily not investment advice. And
No, this is just discussion.
Yeah, what he said.
If they like the show, they should subscribe. All of those things.
Right. Yeah, it's very hard to believe that CRISPR isn't gonna, from these levels, because it's cheap. It's got almost $2 billion in cash. It's 1.9, I think, 1.9 billion, and they're only worth about 4, which is pretty wild when you consider Vertex gave them 900 million up front for 10% more of that lead program for sickle cell disease, and 200 more upon approval. So all in all, once it's approved, they're going to have 1.1 billion for 10%.
I think ultimately Vertex will buy them out.
Yeah, a lot of people think that's a possibility. Same thing with Intellia. They have a huge partnership with Regeneron. So those are very similar situations. I personally like Intellia more, despite the fact that it's a couple years behind CRISPR, mainly because their lead program, all of us on Twitter thought it was 50-50 split. And then someone mentioned, they took a look in the 10K, it's 75. Intellia gets 75 of that 2001, the one that sent it up to $200 a share in June of 2001 when it really got hot. So 75%, that's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot. I have it as like a 25 billion stock in 3 to 4 years.
Dr. Chuck has a question. He's concerned about the malignancy risk in gene editing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely the one thing about CRISPR that I would say most people do think that it's safer for a couple reasons, probably. For one, they have data from the first patient that's about 4 years old already. So and they haven't had any issues at all, really. So I think that's pretty amazing, because when you have 100 people dosed, you would think just from old age or something, someone would come up with, that's what I always worry about, that someone that's maybe 60, 70 years old in one of these trials is going to have cancer and the stocks are going to plummet, because you don't necessarily know what's at fault. Is it the drug or is it just old age?
Right.
No, that's my main concern with any of these, really, with Intellia, because they only have 2 years of data on their lead program. But so far so good. But that's in vivo, and people do worry about the CRISPR 1.0, the original CRISPR in an in vivo setting, because ex vivo you have a lot more control. It's outside of the body. That's where they're doing everything. But in vivo, once you put that stuff in someone's body, more things could go wrong, potentially. So,
I also heard that there could be loss of some of the DNA as a result of this technique.
well, when you're doing a double-stranded break, it's not always 100% of the time going to repair itself perfectly. But like we talked about earlier, when you're getting radiation or a sunburn or just walking outside, your DNA is changing every day. And they're getting them better and better, these techniques. They're getting more efficient every year, every month, to have
All right,
less.
let's get into the investing end of it. Do you think that CRISPR is a fairly good chance of doubling in 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could more than double, but I think double is a safer kind of bet to not get people's.
Do you have targets for all of the gene editing stocks? How would you rate them?
Oh, we could go over those once we get once we look at the chart, so we have perspective.
I'm going to look at the charts.
But actually, Skyline had a good question. He asked, who owns the patent for the technology?
All right, we'll take that question before I share.
Okay, I'll try to make that quick, because that is a complicated question. So for the 1.0 patents in Europe, the Doudna and Charpentier side, which are Intellia and CRISPR Therapeutics, they have that. In the US, the Feng Zhang, his group with the Broad Institute from the East Coast, they paid, I think it was a $70 fee to expedite their patent approval. And even though they sent it in later, because they paid the $70, they currently are credited with inventing the CRISPR 1.0 just because they paid $70. So I'm pretty
70 days was spent.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I'm pretty cheap. So whenever I'm thinking about being cheap or too cheap, I always think about that story. I'm like, is it worth being cheap in this situation? Because they're spending millions and billions of dollars.
So basically, the patent issue is unclear.
Yeah, it's a very unclear. Most people think it'll get figured out. In my opinion, considering Edit is the one that currently has the U.S. Connection, and they're in a very weak negotiating situation. It wouldn't be Edit directly that would be doing the negotiation. It would be the Broad Institute, which is where they have a license from. But still, I think, considering how poorly Edit's been doing, I think it's going to get rectified. Also, with the plants, with all the agriculture, the two sides recently made a deal where they basically allowed each other to use the base editing and the CRISPR 1.0, and it seemed like they were very friendly with that deal. So that makes me a little bit more hopeful that they're not going to, even though it looks messy with the court system, I think a lot of that is just the scientists wanting credit and kind of maybe pushing for.
I think maybe Editas is a likely take-up candidate because
That's what I've said. They're so cheap. It's and their executives change every month, so it's not like they have an executive that's really committed to the company. So I think it could be bought out.
Well, don't they need clear ownership of these patents before that happens?
Personally, you're invested in just two, correct?
So what Spike just said about the clear ownership is something that probably could be a sticking point for some of these people wanting to buy out. But at these prices, people might just take a flyer on it, really. Because edit's
like
cheap.
$70 all over again.
Yeah, edit's cheap. And then, personally, currently, I'm only in Beam and Intellia.
Okay.
But I anyone that wants to buy CRISPR, I think it's a smart move too.
What about Editas?
I like the other three too much. I think Edit, if you really want to diversify in the sector, and definitely it's a cheap stock. I think you're not gonna. The odds of you losing money if you hold it for a long time seem pretty low to me.
And what about the other two, Prime and Caribou?
So Prime has the biggest potential out of all of them, but they're going to have to dilute a lot if they don't start making deals. I originally thought the deals were going to be very easy for them to make, but now there's a lot of copycats. A lot of these companies are copying. You could look at it two ways. Obviously, that means what they have is very valuable, because you're not going to see 5 copycat companies come out if it's not something very worthwhile, right? At the same time, it's going to make it harder. You're already seeing some of the copycats making deals, and we haven't heard of Prime making a deal yet.
I know that there was heavy insider buying when they went public.
Yeah, Dr. David Liu has a large percentage of the shares, like 24% or something. And then Caribou is also very cheap, like Edit. The nice thing about Caribou, their one data point that they showed so far on their oncology, it was the lowest dose, and it had a complete response. 50% had a complete response at the 6-month mark. And that was for the lowest dose.
Wow.
So
I think this year I would like to think that we're going to get the medium dose. Maybe we'll probably get another.
It wouldn't be a foolish move to own all of them. A little of all.
Yeah, no, I think especially now that they're so de-risked, in my opinion, in terms of the price. Caribou also has some agriculture and stuff like that, which makes them a little different. And then all the other ones are mainly just human therapeutics. But right. Caribou has. I like Caribou.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I guess there's a lot of potential in agriculture, right? I mean, so.
Yeah,
we're all focusing on getting new livers and getting our sickle cell anemia cured. But if it could do something to make a more robust plant that could react to vermin better, that's got to be good too, right?
Yeah, they're doing all kinds of stuff. They're doing mosquitoes in Africa, so they stop the malaria and all that stuff. But yeah, I'm anxious to see the Caribou data.
Let's look at a few charts. I for one sold all my Beam early, about sometime last week, and I went into Intellia. with every penny that I took out of Beam. And so far, the switch has been good for me. Not great, but good.
Yeah, it's the difference has been really strong the last week or two.
Yeah.
Intellia has been outperforming.
Happy with my moves so thus far. This is the Intellia chart. You want to make any remarks about it?
I mean, for me, I don't put a lot into the charts. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what happens with this IND is going to determine which way this chart goes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that they just said on the earnings call that they just applied for their first ever U.S. FDA IND for 2002, which is their second program, and that takes 30 days. So who knows? They didn't tell us exactly when they applied for it, so it could be any day now, within the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it looks like it looks like it's coming off its bottoming process right here.
Yeah, it got really weak when it had to do that dilution at 45.80 was the price that they added some more dilution to the balance sheet.
It went as low as 32.44 back here on January 20th. And
Yeah.
people were asking me, what's with Intellia? I said, don't worry about it. That was my answer.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but Pharma Bro, the guy that went to jail for the insulin prices, or whatever it was, he did a big video review of Intellia a couple of weeks ago, and it was pretty entertaining. I think it was a 55-minute video. So
he's bullish.
Oh yeah, he had a he made some mistakes. You could tell that he doesn't like eat and breathe it like I do. So for instance, he put both programs at 75% ownership, but they have 100% of the second program. And even with some of the mistakes, and he didn't give any value to anything but those two programs. All he did was based on the two programs, and he put a $90 price target.
And the chart of Intellia, like the chart of probably most of them, has been a series of lower highs stemming back all the way here to August 2022. So we've had the strong descending channel here, but a nice double bottom was put in back here in 1228 and as I said before, on 120 at 33 at about 33.25. So we have the double bottom at this point, and I think we can take that to the bank that it's not going to go below that. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, because now with that dilution, they're up to 1.3 billion in cash.
Yeah,
which is pretty strong, and they're only around three. Maybe it's done well lately, so they're probably 3.3 billion market cap.
I don't know.
So something like that. They're low threes. With
the chart, I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't look strong, but I think it has potential to break out of this downward trend line. I could draw the downward trend line probably.
Yeah, I think it needs to break whatever the last high was from February.
Yeah.
If it can get above that February level,
break at least one of these highs.
Yeah, that February looks, I don't know. That looks, I don't know where February was, but
I drew in a trend line. I'm looking for a break of 45.26.
Yeah, and 45.80 was where they did the raise.
Right here, 46.03. Actually, 46.03. I want to break.
Okay.
And that'll get the ball rolling. Then we can worry about taking out the next lower high at 51 and change.
The reason
Yeah, I think the charts on all of them are going to be a little bit like this, but we'll look at one or two more.
The reason why I like Intellia is, they have the 75% and the 100% of their 2 lead programs. CRISPR only gets 40%.
Oh, really?
Of the, because it was 50-50, but like I said, they gave away 10% for like $1 billion, which, they didn't have to dilute and stuff. So who knows if that was smart or not, but probably smart, because that drug eventually is going to be obsolete, because the wave 2 without the harsh conditioning, that's going to come either from Beam or from someone. They're all working on it. Once that comes, you're not going to make any money from this drug.
Unless they find out it works better with a clean slate.
Yeah. Beam's data is looking really good for that wave 2. And they're also trying wave 3, which is the in vivo.
CRISPR is similar chart, like I said, in terms of if you look at it, almost the same timing. From the other one was from August. This is from 7/20. No, this is from this is also 7/20/22 that have made a top, and it's been sliding ever since. It looks very much like the other chart that we just looked at.
Yeah, I've been very surprised with CRISPR, because they're going to get the EU. I guess it's not called a EU approval. It's just like an EMA, like a nod. Like basically the EMA says, yeah, you're approved, but then they have to go deal with each country individually in Europe.
Yeah.
So it's a little different, but that's supposed to happen around June. So that'll technically be like their first approval in June. And then I think September is my guess for the FDA.
Yeah. Well, the good news for CRISPR, unlike Intellia, is that it's now trading above the downward trend line, but it's still hugging it. So we'd like to take out the 200-day. That's what we'd like.
The approval seems almost certain, unless if something crazy happens. And it would be very shocking if the stock doesn't double. Maybe not overnight, but it could overnight, just on these kind of approvals, because it's cheap right now. It's only about $4 billion, I think.
The low that it made on 12/30 was 38.94, similar to the low that Intellia made. There's a great deal in common with the chart of Intellia.
Yeah, that was really, really crazy when it had about $2 billion in cash and was only trading in the $3 billion range, like $3.5 billion or something.
I think one of the big broker analysts put in a target of $37, and it hit a low of 39. He came pretty close.
Yeah, so some of these analysts, I don't know what planet they live on.
Yeah,
because like, okay, yeah, sure, you can make a target for it, but don't tell me in 12 months that CRISPR is going to be $37. That's not. And the only way that happens is if somehow they don't get approval, which pretty much everyone says that's a lock.
Yeah, let's take a look at your favorite one, Beam.
Yeah, it's a tough hold. I would say this half, because not much is happening for the company.
The whole industry is like there's been a dearth of news for the whole industry.
It's all the same chart,
Yeah, they're all decimated.
Yeah, it's all the same chart.
Is this because they have nothing to say, or is it just because they're hiding their cards?
Well, by very soon in the next month or so, they're going to dose their first ever patient for the Beam 101 for sickle cell disease. And their preclinical data was best in class, even better than the CRISPR data. And CRISPR data is very good. I mean,
it seems like they're all working on sickle cell disease. Is there a particular reason why that's the case?
it's the easiest one, like, because it's the easiest thing to do ex vivo other than the cancer, because their second program's 201, and that's a cancer program.
What about hemophilia?
Yeah, I believe Intellia has two programs, hemophilia A and B.
Uh-huh.
They have two in the pipeline. I think they're partners with Regeneron on both of them, or at least one of them. But yeah, to answer your question, sickle cell is like it's the easiest one. They're all trying to use it like as a proof of concept, basically. Edit was the one that was trying to swing for the fences for a home run and do something different, and we see where that got them.
Not very far.
Yeah, if they cured a blind child, they would have been $1,000 stock, but they took a big swing and they missed. The eye is a tough thing, but
This looks an awful lot like CRISPR chart.
But yeah, Beam, it has the 101 patient that's going to be dosed very soon. They're going to dose their first patient for their cancer program by mid-year. The big Beam news is going to be that Verve data, because they get 50% of the U.S. profits on the Verve partnership for cholesterol.
All right, let me just chart Verve.
And that Verve data is supposed to come second half of this year.
Verve looks like it's at or near a bottom. That looks attractive.
Yeah, it's only like 1.1 billion market cap. I was telling everyone when it was just like $40. It was double, and I told everyone sell it, because it was, if you took out the cash position from Verve and Beam, Verve for one moment was more valuable than Beam, which was crazy.
Right now, it looks like a screaming buy to me. I think it's going to hold at the bottom at 17 and change.
Yeah, a lot of people like it anytime it's like under 20.
And you hold it to a swing. You could swing it up to the 200 or maybe to 50 or the 100 rather. I would shoot it up and look to put a target above 20, 23.
Verve is really funny because people always ask me why I'm so bearish on Verve. I think it's going to times by 10. So I'm like the biggest bear bull possible, because I don't know how long it's going to take. But the problem with Verve is the lead program's cholesterol. And it's hard enough to get people to take a vaccine for COVID. Like, right. Are you going to take gene editing for cholesterol?
Yeah.
That's the problem. But then they say, oh, the TAM is huge. The TAM is massive. And I'm like, yeah, but what? 1 out of 1,000 people are going to take it? That's why I like Intellia, because their two programs are really bad diseases that people are going to line up for.
Do you know which blood cancer it is?
For what?
Which blood cancer?
What company are you talking about?
Intellia.
Oh, no. Okay. The two programs for Intellia are amyloidosis. That's the 2001. And then hereditary angioedema.
Oh, okay.
They're not cancers. They're just genetic diseases.
HAE is what BioCryst has a drug for, and if Intellia is successful, it'll knock the hell out of BioCryst. Yeah,
that's the 2002 hereditary angioedema. Yeah. That one they've only had about a year of data, but it was perfect. Very similar.
Looms down the road. It looms a threat to BioCryst, which is already beaten up. This chart looks quite ugly, but on the other hand, it's nearing a relative bottom that looks strong at 1530.
Yeah, it likes to hold 15 because I always tell people if it's under 15, that's when I look to add prime.
Or around 15.
Yeah, I've been Intellia and Intellia and Beam have been so weak that I'm not in a hurry to add a prime, but I definitely want some prime at some point.
Yeah. All right, so I think we can wrap it up. I think we covered a lot of ground.
Really appreciate you being here.
Oh yeah, just I don't know if you have Twitter also, but if you guys ever have questions, just
yeah, I'm on Twitter at your chess, JER.
Yeah, I know we follow each other.
And you're in gene editing, right?
Yeah, I think it's Gene Investing is the handle.
Oh, gene investing. Okay.
Yeah. Intellia, I really like Intellia.
One more, maybe take one more question.
Oh yeah, sure.
I don't know if you can answer this one.
Well, Illumina is it's a big, I don't know what the market, I know it's been cut in half or something. It's a lot cheaper than it was, but it's a huge market cap compared to PAC-B. So you're talking about Tesla compared to Lucid,
right?
Basically, right? So Illumina is a lot probably safer, more mature company, but PAC-B does have the long read. I actually had some PAC-B back in the day. I've never had Illumina, but a lot of people just think they're going to have a hard time making tons of money. Because it's just like machines. The bulls think
which one would you rather be in right now if you had to be?
Yeah. I wouldn't be in either of them because I probably put all my money in.
You did the best.
Any extra money's going to Intellia.
I don't know what you want to make of this question, but it's not even a question. But
doctor did mention amyloidosis treatment. Well, I think they mean the amyloidosis isn't spelled right, but that's the Intellia 2001 treatment. It sounds like someone maybe knows about amyloidosis and they're just curious about maybe where that's coming from. Yeah, Intellia is the company. Intellia 2001 they have a polyneuropathy arm and a cardiomyopathy. They have two different. It's basically two different studies they're doing inside that program, and they've all been perfect so far.
Okay.
So
all right. So in summary, what would you suggest to someone that doesn't own any gene editing stocks at the moment? What would be their first nibble?
It depends on the time horizon. That's why for me, Intellia, CRISPR is something that should be very strong this year.
Okay.
First ever, Intellia skyrocketed just on that first program in vivo.
Someone I know in biotech that's big, very knowledgeable of the biotech industry told me that this is a year that will make or break the gene editing stocks. Hopefully it will make it.
Yeah, I think as long as CRISPR gets approval like they should, and that Verve data is going to be important. I think the only thing people are worried about is some safety kind of thing coming up, because it's pretty clear that it's going to work. It's just the safety. People just want to keep seeing the safety. It's funny because when the market's doing really well, it's not as big of a concern, and then the market does terrible for biotech, and then everyone's like, oh, cancer. They weren't really saying that when they were 3 times higher than this.
Yeah.
But
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. And thanks again for coming. And come again sometime.
yeah, thanks for having me.
When I'll tell you when you're coming again. When CRISPR hits 80.
Oh, that's gonna be a while.
It's okay. Maybe not. Maybe not as long as you think.
Yeah, they do move really fast. So it could be by summer. Yeah.
All right. Good chatting. Anytime you want. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to
right.
be.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Love to have you. This was fun.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Respect. Bye.